Cystic fibrosis and the CFTR gene. Cystic fibrosis is a hereditary disease and it's usually diagnosed by the age of 2. It mostly affects the respiratory system, but it also affects the digestive system, pancreas, and liver. It's usually characterized by shortness of breath, wheezing, and persistent cough with phlegm. It's caused by mutations in the cystic fibrosis transmembrane regulator gene, or CFTR gene. So what is the CFTR gene? It's a gene that codes for proteins that are responsible for regulating the translocation of chloride molecules. So chloride molecules attract water molecules, and this allows the cell to produce a wet mucus. And this is important for lubrication all over the body. And as you can see in the diagram on the right, in a normal airway, the chloride ions are able to sort of leave the cell and bind with water. And this hydrates the mucus, and you can see that in the top layer and in green. So when the CFTR gene is mutated, the proteins aren't able to function properly, and so they can't regulate this process. You can see again in the diagram on the right, the chloride molecules are not able to go in and out of the cell properly, but the sodium ions continue to do what they do normally. And so then the mucus gets dehydrated and it becomes thick and sticky, and this clogs airways and it traps bacteria, causing inflammation and infection. And this is also why people with CF, you tend to see pneumonia and bronchitis. In a study done in 1997, mass spectrometry was actually used to understand how DNA can be used to diagnose CF. They found that there are more than 580 mutations on the CFTR gene that can cause CF, and to diagnose it accurately, only a certain amount of mutations need to be detected. And what's interesting is that that number actually differs between ethnicities. So for example, in a Scottish population, only 17 mutations need to be detected for the diagnosis to be 80% accurate, but for a German population, 50 mutations need to be found to be 70% accurate. So pinpointing the specific types of mutations is not only necessary for diagnosing CF, it is also necessary for the use of certain treatments like CFTR modulators, which I'll get into in a minute. And in another study from 2015, it was suggested that genome editing technology could be useful in correcting the function of the CFTR gene. And this would be done by using stem cells from fibroblasts. And so the researchers used zinc finger nucleases to target these mutated sections of the CFTR gene. And in vitro, the cells differentiated and expressed the correct CFTR gene. And so then the chloride channels that I had mentioned earlier actually functioned properly. And this study definitely shows the potential for using stem cells as a treatment and for CF. So right now, there are several different types of treatments. There are certain ones that only help relieve symptoms though, and these would be called airway clearance techniques. These are actually effective because they physically loosen up clogged airways. And for example, on the right, you can see a girl using high frequency chest wall oscillation. And this is actually a vest you can wear that vibrates at a high frequency to loosen up any mucus that might be in there. Another treatment is CFTR modulator therapies. I had mentioned these a little earlier, but these are a type of oral medication. So these modulators are actually very interesting. They're only effective on certain mutations. So genetic testing has to be done to determine which type of mutations an individual might have. And that's why the first study that I had mentioned of detecting CFTR mutations is just very important. Mutations in general are definitely responsible for a whole slew of diseases like CF, and the progress made with CFTR modulators and the continued studies of the CFTR gene are very important in developing more effective treatments and even possibly a cure for cystic fibrosis.